Hello, good morning, good afternoon and good evening to wherever you are in the world again. This is the Inside Out podcast and episode 4. I'm your host Stephen Jakes from healingthemind.co.uk, and with me is my good friend and co-host and genius therapist, founder of Decoding Pain. I know you don't like that. Founder of Decoding Pain, also creator of the amazing DTO system and author of the book Decoding Pain. Emotional Blueprint to Healing Chronic Pain. So, good afternoon to you, Jonathan. How you been? How's your week been?
Afternoon, Steve. It's been a very good week. It's been very, very busy. Working with lots of clients, which I love, and helping lots of people. So it's been very busy from that point of view. And I'm really looking forward to sharing the solution to depression with people, because it's something very close to my heart, because I've experienced depression myself, and I know it's very close to your heart as well, because that's mainly where you came from. Yeah,
and also as well, I mean, I've been having some conversations with people just recently, and they basically, I was speaking to a guy on Monday evening, and he's just lost a friend who took his own life. Because of depression, and you obviously imagine how I reacted to that, because I thought, oh my God, I could have helped him there. I really could have helped him there, and he's got family and children, so it's really, really sad, and our thoughts and family go out to him and his family. But
and that's my reaction when I hear of famous people and they've taken their own life. And you know, I heard recently for people who don't know, I used to be a magician, and there was a famous magician in the world that I knew who I found out took his own life a couple of years ago, and I know that through what I know, I could have saved him from doing that. If I could have helped him get better and healed depression, he wouldn't have had to do that. And that's you know, one of my favourite comedians, Robin Williams. You know, I could have potentially helped him resolve it, and that's really, really sad, because I've helped a lot of people resolve their depression. So it's no different technically, and it just saddens me when mental illness right now is a big watchword and everyone's talking about it, but what they're doing is still not going to solve it. They're talking about it, they're saying people need to talk about it more, but actually that's not the solution. That's not going to solve it. Talking about it more will not solve it. So I want to give people a solution today and explain why and how to solve it, so at least you guys know, and you can then take the right steps.
So as you said, the purpose of this podcast today, and as I said, this is episode 4. It's the second part of the depression podcast, and it is actually called How to Remove and Solve and Heal Depression Part 2. The solution.
The solution, yes.
So we're going to come up with a solution now, and it pretty much works every time. I've yet to work with anybody, or you work with anybody yet, that it hasn't worked with. It's pretty foolproof, and there's reasons and methods behind it, and so which you're going to explain in a little while. But in the first podcast, obviously, we talked about depression, the traditional viewpoint of depression, and how current medicine and other therapies look at it. We also talked about the misunderstandings and misconceptions, the common myths that it's a disease or you've got it and you have to live with it. That's who you are. It's genetic, it's a chemical imbalance, and there was a whole load of other areas that we covered. Although people may believe that that's what they have, or that's what they've been told, ultimately it's not going to help them. And all the beliefs around it, people going mad and no one will understand, and their dark thoughts, etc. as well, didn't we? We covered that as well, and obviously the elements of being of the guilt and shame and not wanting to actually heal themselves because they don't deserve it and stuff. So so we did cover that, and if you didn't hear that and you're listening to this particular episode, it might be worth you going back and listening to part 1 of it, because we do cover a lot in there and the misunderstandings of it. But that was in part 1, and so today now this is the good bit, and it's going to be the answer and the solution. So I'm going to hand over to you now, and obviously you can expand a little bit on what you know and on through experiences, and help the listener come to find the solution to the problem if they've got it.
Okay, great. So I've experienced depression off and on over the years, and I struggle to get rid of it myself, so I know how hard it can be, and I learnt lots of things to get rid of it, and sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't. But one of the main things I learnt about depression was the actual root cause of it, and it's not what people think. It's not the traditional root cause of it. It's a new understanding of the root cause of depression, and this allowed me to find depression in people and in myself a lot quicker and switch it off. And then later on, I also learnt one of the main emotional responses that causes depression, which a lot of people don't really talk about very much because it's kind of a hidden emotional response. So we're going to cover that as well, and a little bit about the sabotage. But what I want to say is that in my 10 or so years of working with depression and anxiety, of solving it in me and other people, 60% of the people who follow this process get better within 1 to 2 months. I would say another 30% of those people get better in 3 to 4 months, maybe even 6 months, but they are better and it's gone. And there is a 5% of people who are very, very complicated and take a lot longer because they've had so much over their life. It's just running constantly. It takes longer to deal with, but they've had it for 30, 40, 50 years. And 5% of people, it only doesn't work if the person doesn't follow the advice and doesn't do what I'm suggesting. Then it doesn't work. But as long as you follow the advice and you do what we suggest, then it will work, and it does work pretty much every single time. Although I said if you've had it for years, I had one lady and she had depression for 50 years, and within a few weeks, couple of months, the majority of depression had completely lifted. She'd lost that dark energy that was in her head. She'd lost that heavy cloud that was over all the time, and now she's back to being more herself again. She's back to enjoying her life more, and she ultimately doesn't want to kill herself anymore. She didn't want to kill herself in that way, but she thought when she got to a certain age she'd be out of here, and she's not looking to do that anymore. So this process works very well. You just need to understand what you need to do. Yeah.
So what I was just going to say is obviously we covered it I was obviously in a really, really bad place, but after having done the treatments with yourself.
Yeah.
Like I said, I pretty much was isolated for nearly 2 years. I was stuck in this. I won't say stuck in this house, but I chose to stay in this house to try and resolve it and learn about it and all the rest of it. But having worked with it, was for me, considering how bad it was, I found that very, very quickly. Once the specific elements were switched off, I was get out. I didn't want to no longer stay in anymore. I felt the urge to go out and start reconnecting with people and being out there. And it actually felt, where before it felt wrong to go out, now it felt wrong to stay in.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to expand on that.
No, so that's good, because what a lot of people are told with depression is take yourself out. You're told, go out, do more things, start doing things, and that will help with depression.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult when you have depression, I know, because as Steve said, when you have depression, you just want to stay in. You don't want to see people, you don't want to interact, you just want to be on your own. And trying to force yourself out, some people can do that and they kind of feel better, but then they go back home and they feel crap again.
Yeah.
Or they'll see someone that triggers them and it reminds them again. Whereas if you clear it, if you switch it off, then you naturally want to start going out. You naturally want to start meeting new people.
You just start doing it.
Yeah, there's no thought involved. You just do it. You just wake up one day and go, I want to go out today.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
And you do go out today.
Yeah.
And it flows and it works. And gradually, as you switch more and more off, you start naturally putting yourself into life again rather than removing yourself from life. So that's what I want people to do. I want people to have that experience and do it naturally without all the effort and the hard work of what they tell you to do it right now. Because the way they teach you to cope and manage with depression is very hard work. It's a slog. It's an uphill struggle. And that's often why people go backwards, because they're trying to cope and do the things they know they should do, but emotionally feel they can't do it. Well, it's that
being strong, using energy and willpower to compensate it. And we know that you can only be strong for so long. And then you said something to me a little while ago about, which I totally agree with, is that being strong means that you'll be strong for a certain amount of time, but it takes energy and willpower. And then sooner or later, the strength will dissipate. And then what will happen is you'll have that massive collapse.
Yeah.
Now, I'd imagine that specifically with depression, if you're using that technique, when you do have that crash, that can be very close to the limit where you can actually probably get to the point where you think, I can't do this anymore. It will sort of have a double impact of your depression.
Well, the more you keep trying that, the more crashes you have, the more you feel like giving up.
Yes,
that's the more hopeless it feels.
Yeah, that's where I got
because you keep trying, and you go backwards, trying, and the more you keep going backwards, you feel like life's against you, like God's against you, like you're not meant to have this, not meant to have that.
Yes,
and you feel like there's no point.
Yeah,
and that's part of the problem with trying to live with it. Whereas if you just follow this little bit of advice we're going to give you, find someone to help you with it, you can switch it off. But yes, that is a big problem, and you kind of lose hope.
Yeah.
But we don't want that. We want you to know there is hope. You can solve it.
Yeah.
And no, it won't go away in 5 seconds, but within a few months, then you will start feeling better. And once you're feeling better, you keep going till it heals.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is through using the DTO process and actually visiting, once we'll cover this in a minute about what it is and how it happens, but when you actually become aware of what they are and you actually start visiting those, you actually will start getting instant relief from it. Because because as soon as you switch that, let's say there might be 5 episodes or 5 things that do cause the depression, which we'll go into, but once you actually start removing the emotional responses or the guilt and shames around what that is, you will instantly start lifting. So even after the very, very first session of DTO, you will be moving out of it. I noticed that straight away. That's why it's so effective, and why I'm a practitioner of it, and I use it every day, because the DTO system doesn't just do depression, it does everything else, but especially with depression is that most people will want some instant relief. And you won't get completely healed, but you will get instant relief from it, even after just the very first session of it. It will lift it, it will lift it, it will lift it. It's just like a gradual process until you realise, hang on, you'll just wake up one day like I did and think, hang on a minute.
I'm not depressed anymore.
What's going on?
Wow, I feel quite happy, and it won't be like it won't be, oh my god, I feel amazing and happy.
Yeah.
You'll go back to being just kind of content and just generally happy.
Yeah.
You will just be kind of you in the environment. You won't have that excitement or happy. You won't have that depression. You'll just be you, because that happiness sometimes that where you get, I'm really joyful, that can sometimes be fake.
Yes.
You can get excited by things, but the excitement doesn't last. It's not. You really want that just contentment, centered, balanced state where you live kind of every day. And then you find you're just living life, and you're just generally enjoying life and smiling at the sunshine, and things will work. So how do we accomplish that? So what I'm going to say to you right now, put aside everything you think you know, put aside everything you think you've been taught, because whenever I get someone in my client, the first thing I say to them is, I'm going to tell you the complete opposite of everything you've been taught. But if you want to solve the problem, you've got to do the opposite of what you've been taught, because what you're doing is not working for you. And Einstein's definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. This is the problem I have with the mental awareness stuff today. They're getting you to talk about it more, which is great, but they're still using the same thing to try and change it.
And they're not giving you a solution.
And not giving you a solution to it. You want a solution. Talking about it's great. Make people aware of it, but let's solve it. Let's not just maintain it. Let's solve it.
Yeah, and if we solved it, no one would have to talk about it.
No one talk about it. It'd be fine. So what do? So there's 2 parts to solving. First is an actual understanding of why depression is there, an actual specific targeted reason why depression is there. Once you know that, once you understand that, it will clear the fog. Because at the moment, when people try and solve depression, they go into their brains, they think, is it this, is that, and they go round and round in circles. You go and see a therapist, a counsellor, psychologist, and they'll go, it might be this, might be that, might be this, might be childhood, and you go around in circles. No, it's something very specific. It's going to be very specific types of shocks. So depression is caused by something specific, a specific type of shock. Once you know the specific types of shocks, you then need a technique to switch that off, to change how you feel about the shock. Not talk about how you feel, not keep reliving it over and over again, but actually change how you feel. So that's the second part, a way to change it. But the first part is the actual understanding. So what is the understanding? Very, very simple. Depression is caused by moments of shock. A moment that is unexpected, dramatic, isolating, with no coping strategy. And the specific type of shock is a territorial issue, something to do with your territory. And there are 5 territory issues that will affect depression. There is a territory anger issue. So someone has come into your territory and it's made you angry. Or someone's come into your territory and threatened your territory. So it's either left you angry or frightened for your territory. Or you've had a territory loss. So you've lost someone has left. You've lost a partner because they've divorced you or left you, or they've passed away. Or you've lost your job.
Or your children, in my case.
Or your children. Yeah, in Steve's case, tragically.
Yeah, I lost my business, my children, my car, all of them.
You lost everything. So that's why a lot of Steve's depression was caused by the territory loss. Something in his territory It got taken away. So when I say territory, what I mean is your territory is what you perceive as yours. Your territory is your space around you. So for men, the 4 territories for men are their work, their home, the 4 walls, their partner, and their kids. And then a man might have a specific territory. So if he plays golf, it might be the club he goes to might be his territory, or it might be his car, or it might be his shed, his garage where he works. Yeah. Those are specific to each individual. But most men's territory are work, home, partner, and children. For women, territory, if we say territory, we say social for women, because women are more social creatures, and it can be more places. So it's not just home, work, partner and kids, but it can be family, it can be shopping, it can be different things to their territory. It can also be your own identity. Your body is your territory. So if someone invades your territory, that's another, because you can't mark your boundaries.
Right.
So the 5 conflicts are a territory anger issue, where someone's come into your territory and made you angry. A territory loss, where you've lost something. A territory fear, where someone's come into your territory and you're frightened in your territory. A territory marking issue, where you can't mark your boundaries, so someone's invaded your space. And a territory issue that you can't accept or digest. So something's happened and you cannot swallow it. You cannot believe it happened. So typical examples of this, so if we take a territory anger issue, for instance, if you have a shock, especially if you're a man, usually it's fear for a woman, but it's anger for a man. I'm not being sexist, that's the energy. Feminine energy is more, runs with territory issue, it runs with a fear, and with a man it comes as anger. So if a man has a territory issue and it made him angry at the time, it can then alter his personality. So then what will happen is he may start drinking more. He may start being more angry around people. He may get angry at himself for doing stupid things like dropping keys. I used to do that. I used to get really angry if someone dropped my keys, and I would shout at the keys, "Bloody keys! Why'd you do that?" Yeah. I'm the one who dropped them. I mean, the keys did nothing. I mean, I would get angry at people and frustrated with them because I'd had something in my territory that made me angry. Now, I wasn't consciously aware of that. And as I talk about these territories, you may be consciously aware of what they are, or you may not. That's not relevant. If you are, great, but it's up to the therapist to find these for you. So if a man has a shock that hits you in your territory and makes you angry, it can cause you to get angry at stupid little things. It can cause you to get angry at specific types of people. It can cause, or very extreme, be angry at the world. You can be angry at the world and God, and Steve, you were kind of there as well.
No, I wasn't.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
You disagree with me? That makes me angry. No,
I was angry at everything.
Everyone, yeah. And I had a slightly minor version of that. I was angry at some people, but not everybody. And I was get angry at stupid things. But it can also go to extreme, where it causes you to drink, or it causes you to...
Which I did, or take lots of drugs.
Which you did, or take lots of drugs.
Gamble, or smoke too much, or whatever it is. It leads to a self-destructive behaviour.
So it leads to some kind of addiction. And then if you have a territory loss, well, a territory loss, depending on the type of loss, whether it's someone left or someone's passed away, well, that can cause you to push people away. It can cause you to feel more isolated, not want to be around people, or it can make you angry again, or frightened to actually love someone again, or frightened to actually get involved into a connection again and connect with people. So it can alter your personality when you have these types of shocks. Yeah. And depending on the type of shock you have, depends on how it alters your personality. And you may not realise your personality is altered. People may come to you and go, "Oh, well, you're this and that." And you go, "No, I'm not," and you'll disagree with them. Yeah. Deep down, you know you are.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, what I was going to say is specifically as well, is, for example, you might have somebody coming to start work in an office that you're working with. A new person might start, who comes in, who's got quite a strong character, and he's now starting to sort of dominate or puts you under threat for your position, or you perceive to be. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, that's your territory issue. It's a territorial thing. So you might actually get depressed because somebody that's coming to your workplace that might be threatening your position, or being more powerful for you, or whatever, and you won't even be aware of it, but that can trigger
because they're invading your space, or they're threatening, taking something away from you. That's right. And that's the second part of it. As Steve said, it can trigger you, and the second part is the trigger. So the shock so you may have lost a girlfriend or a partner, a boyfriend many years ago, and that may have happened 20 years ago. But later on, now it's being triggered by something. It's being triggered by when you meet someone that you like, or
they might have similar eyes, or a similar physique, or a similar voice, or something.
Or a similar body posture.
Yeah.
They may have the same haircut, or maybe you're still wearing a piece of jewellery from years ago and you don't realise it that person gave you, and every time you put it on, it triggers you. A lot of triggers are very unconscious. We're not consciously aware of them, but they trigger the response in us.
Yeah. Again, and the TV's great for that.
TV is the worst one. TV, because it triggers so many responses in us, and it's designed to do that, especially shows, but talk shows and everything these days are designed to do it as well. But it can trigger the response in you. I mean, I used to have a loss conflict, and anytime I'd watch a TV program where somebody lost somebody, I would be blubbering. I'd be a complete mess. It actually doesn't affect me now. When I see it, I go, I used to cry at that. And I was like, it kind of makes me smile. Although I did cry in Avengers Endgame. That was very tragic. But
I see that as funny because I didn't.
Everyone did. You see, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
I didn't.
I thought you would say every. Yeah, I mean, I know it's a bit more serious now, but I didn't. I didn't cry.
So it didn't trigger you to that.
No, it didn't trigger me at all.
But movies and TV shows are designed to trigger us, but they shouldn't trigger us to a very severe emotional response. So the second part I learned was not just finding the shock, but then finding what triggers the shock, because sometimes you'll clear the shock, but you're still being triggered by it because there's an element that's left.
Yeah.
So the first thing is you need to find the territorial shocks that have happened. So again, territory anger or territory fear, territory loss, territory invasion of your boundaries, and a territory issue you can't digest. Once you know which one those are, or a combination, if it's a combination, that's when depression gets very severe. If it's a combination of those things, you then can find what's triggering them in your environment. Something around you is triggering them. So the best example I can give you is a loss. So I treated a lady a couple of years ago now. She'd lost her partner 2 years before, and she still couldn't get over it. She was still depressed. And she wasn't motivated. She was getting up, going to work, but she didn't want to go on holiday. She didn't want to meet anyone new. She didn't, and her daughter was worried about it. Her daughter referred her to me, and lovely lady. But some of her triggers were seeing their picture on the mantelpiece. She'd actually had to hide that away. Some of the triggers was the dog that she had that she bought with her partner. Some of the triggers were his own personal possessions, and these are all around the house. Now, you don't have to get rid of these things. You can actually switch off with the DTO system. You can actually switch off the triggers, which is great, because I never really in the past had a good way to switch triggers off. This DTO allows us to do that. So not only is it important to clear the territory shock or shocks, it's also important to find the triggers and clear the triggers. Yeah. Once you do that, depression will obviously lift and go away, and as long as you get all of it and you deal with all of it in the sessions, it won't come back again, because you've dealt with the root cause of it. The reason depression keeps coming back is because it keeps getting triggered. Yeah. So you'll deal with one thing, it gets triggered, comes back again. Deal with another thing, gets triggered, comes back again. I did have a client a couple of years. Sorry, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, but the thing is, I mean, I know that probably people that are listening here will also. There may be a stumbling block on that. Stumbling block. Oh. Yeah, stumbling block. It was because in most cases, especially in that specific area, is people will feel the guilty not to let it go. They'll feel guilty for being okay with losing a loved one. They feel like they have to continually feel bad and sad and sorrowful about that, because they feel guilty that, well, if I feel okay, that
it didn't mean I
loved him, or it didn't mean I cared about him. So they'll feel very guilty, and they'll feel ashamed of that. And so that fundamentally will keep people, and can keep people trapped in depression.
With a territory loss, that's the case.
Territory loss,
because the guilt and shame can stop you from wanting to let go of that loss, in case you think you're a bad person or it means you didn't love them. Yeah. It's not what it means at all, but that's what it is. But that's where
that can drive you a little bit crazy, because in your mind you don't want to feel like it.
No,
you go, I don't want to feel this depression. I don't want to feel this depression anymore. But actually, then when it comes to resolving it or wanting to do something about it, you go, well, I don't really want to get rid of it, because what about poor Ernie? I don't want to be happy and joyful and getting on my life again because of the guilt of that. That's you get back in this, and you can get caught up very badly in a loop.
I have a very a story that was a very quick release for someone, but it's just that. And it was basically, so depression can be triggered by even small losses. And this, my old next door neighbour that I used to live next to, she had to, well, obviously she's my next door neighbour. So she actually had to give her dog away. The dog didn't pass away, but the dog they brought did not get on with the men in her family, and she had to give it away to somebody else. And they tried for quite a while, but it just didn't work. So she eventually resigned herself to giving the dog away. When she did, she was devastated. She was depressed. She didn't want to get another dog. She didn't want to go out. She didn't want to do this. And she was not depressed, but she was down. Okay, it didn't create a big depression. It created a minor depression. And I kept bumping into her up the field. She had another dog that she walked, and I was walking my dog as well. And for 3 times I bumped into her, and I never ever bumped into this lady walking up the field. I don't believe in coincidences. This is the universe kind of, collaborating to bring me to her. And for the first 2 or 3 times, she would tell me the story every time. And I don't, when I meet people on the street, I don't go, oh yes, I can help you, blah blah blah, because I just wait for people to come to me. That's not the way that works. When I do that, people kind of get scared, so I don't do that anymore. But in this particular instance, I met her 3 times. Every time she would tell me this story, so she was not being able to let it go. Mm. And on the 4th time I met her, I just said to her, that, would you like to be able to let this go if you could? And she said yes. So in the field that day, I spent 5 minutes. It took me 5 minutes. Now, yes, it was a minor conflict, but she'd been struggling with it for quite a few weeks. She couldn't get over it. And all it boiled down to was the guilt for letting the dog go. Yeah. That was it. She felt guilty that she had to let the dog go. And she couldn't bring herself to call the other guy who she'd given the dog to find out how it was. Couldn't bring herself to get another dog as a mate for her dog she's already got. She just felt so guilty. And it took me 5 minutes to release that. And as soon as I released that, her mood completely changed. The low mood lifted. Yep. She went home that day. She called the new owner, and the dog was absolutely fine, loving where he now lived. And within a week or so, she'd gone and got another dog.
No, it's a similar.
And everything was fine.
Yeah,
she was okay.
I had we was talking about this earlier about there's a young girl that came to see me.
Yes.
You know, and she was in quite a bad place. She was suffering from depression. She had anxiety. She wouldn't leave the home. She hadn't worked for 2 years, and she was scared of the dark, and etc. She was in that place. And basically, when I then found out what actually was going on, it was just something to do with her parents. Once I removed the emotional response to that and the trigger and the guilt and shame from that, literally the next day she texted me and said, "I'm back at work. I've decided not to take my medication. I don't need it.
Wow.
And I'm done. I think she said I'm doing overtime, and which means I've got to walk home in the dark. And so just in that one thing, that whole lot changed. And her depression is in one treatment.
Wow. Now that's amazing.
That is amazing. And it just goes to show that.
The power.
Absolutely.
What can be done, and the tragedy is so many people live with it. And how long did she have that for?
2.5 years.
2.5 years of that, and it lifted really quickly.
Yeah.
And she's still having sessions and clearing other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I've got a different person. Yeah, I mean, she's a super dynamo. I mean, unbelievable. She's blown me away in just 4 sessions where she was when she turned up.
Yeah.
You know, this grey, timid, really shy, down, shoulders slumping forward, feeling sorry for herself. But now, oh my God, she's a powerhouse. Since then, she's also just got a brand new job.
Wow!
So she's flying. I mean, she's a powerhouse, and she's going to go a long way. This girl, but
so that's the power of doing it this way and finding the territory shocks and finding the triggers. When you do that and you use a technique to switch it off, not only does the depression lift, but your life changes.
Yeah.
You make more money, you get better jobs, you develop better relationships. Yeah. Your relationships you already have improved, the relationship with yourself improves. Everything improves around you, and you naturally attract and gravitate to positive things in your life. When you're feeling depressed and low, you naturally gravitate to shit in your life.
Yeah.
Crap. Yeah. Bad people. Not bad people, negative people. People who aren't happy themselves.
Bad for you.
They're bad for you. Yeah. They're not good for who you are. And they're not being who they are either, but you naturally gravitate with the people who match your energy.
Yeah, well, like attracts like.
Yeah, so exactly, like attracts like. So you don't want that, really. You want to lift that so you can attract happy, positive people to you and improve your life. Like Steve said, this young girl, her life's improved. I've treated many people where their life has just dramatically improved.
Well, mine, for example.
Steve, for example,
I can vouch for that.
And when I met him, he had been lifted by another program he did, by Reboot, but he was still had all this trauma running, and he was stuck, and he wasn't making any money, and he was still angry at people, and within a few short weeks, all of that lifted. And he's now...
I've not looked back, mate.
He's not looking back. He's just
formed on
shifting forwards. He's just... he's amazing to witness. And I love seeing that. And it's what happened with me as well. So to solve it, you just need to do those two main things. You need to identify the 5 territory areas. It won't always be all 5. In fact, it might be only 1, but sometimes it'll be a combination. If it's very severe deep depression, it may be all 5. But if it's only a minor low depression, it's probably 1 or 2 of them, or just 1. Then we need to isolate the triggers and what triggers that response. And the final thing is the main... So the shocks, those are territorial issues. Those are what we call a biological response. That's your biology responding to a shock in your environment. But there is one emotional response that actually causes depression to get worse or stick around. And that response is an alone feeling.
Yeah.
Now, the reason it can be made worse, certainly in men, is because when a man tries to go into his head to analyse what's going on, he goes inside his head, and because a man doesn't believe anyone can help or understand, he now feels alone. So women are quite happy to talk, so they don't feel as alone. But the reason that mental awareness out there right now is so big, they're trying to get men to talk. But actually... talking's not the problem, it's the alone feeling is the problem. They feel alone because they don't think anyone will understand. That's why they don't talk. Men don't talk because they don't think anyone can help, because they know talking about it won't change it. And they're right. Talking about it will not change it. You need something to switch it off. Talking about it will make you feel lighter for a minute. Talking about it will make you recognise that, actually other people have got it. And in 5% of people, talking about it may lift it and get rid of it. And if you have spoken about it and got rid of it, great. But in the people that me and Steve see, they've done the talking. We've done the talking. It didn't work. We still went away. It felt crap.
Everybody I know that talks about it will basically just talk about it. And in sometimes, because you're talking about it, it can trigger you into your depression.
It can trigger you back further.
You're recalling the memories and the things that actually created it in the first place.
That's right. And that can trigger you. And it's the trigger that's the problem. So in some cases, yes, it works. But it's important to understand why it works in some cases. And the reason is because it's not triggering them back to it. It's allowing them to release it. But the majority of people I see they've done, and Steve said, we both see people, they've tried it, and it's just re-triggering them again. And the trigger is the problem. So you need to switch the trigger off. So no, the reason men don't want to do it is because they know that talking about it won't do it. But you don't need to talk about it. The answer to switch it off is not a talk therapy. The answer to switch it off is not discussing it or talking with your friends, because you're having an emotional response. You're having a biological response, and talking about that is logic. It won't change the biological response. So the first thing to do is find the territory shock you've had. Find the triggers. I don't expect you to find your own triggers, by the way. You may be able to work out what the territory shock is, but you don't have to. I'm suggesting what you need to do, or what we would do. Finding your own triggers is more complicated. You need an expert to find your triggers, because you don't know. It can get very complicated. Triggers can be very, very subtle. Once you've found that, and you found the alone response, because I said alone, once a man goes into his head, he feels even more alone.
As well.
Women do it as well,
yeah.
But because women are a bit more inclined to talk to their friends, they feel less alone. I've often found that men feel so alone because no one's going to understand them. They think they're crazy themselves, and so they go inside their head trying to solve it, and they feel more alone.
Yeah, and the problem is they're trying to understand what's causing it, and they're trying to solve it themselves.
Yeah.
And they think, if I understand what caused it, then the problem goes away. And this is the biggest mistake that all people with sort of anxiety and depression or anything like that does. They try and understand it, and they think that when they understand it, the problem will go away, and it doesn't. So they will feel alone on the basis that they're trying to solve it themselves as well.
No, you're right. Understanding is the worst thing you can do. It won't help you, and you're often understanding it from the wrong perception anyway. If you understand it from the way we're talking about it, you'll start to see it, and it will lift slightly, but you still need it cleared. You still need it switched off.
Yeah.
Understanding alone will not do it. But if you understand it like this, from the 5 territory shocks and the triggers, you'll start to see the truth. Your unconscious will go, oh my God, well, that's why.
Yeah.
But you still need it switched off because it can still be triggered. So no, understanding it won't help you. But the alone feeling can kick in if you try and resolve it yourself. If you go into your head, it makes it worse. And if you feel like no one's going to understand you, you'll feel alone. Or if you feel like no one can help, you'll feel alone.
Or if you think you're going mad, you're going
mad
alone.
or crazy, you'll feel alone. There are lots of reasons. I have one lady right now, and her depression is so severe that it is basically she's felt alone her whole life from her childhood right away through. And they've been all territory issues. They've been territory losses. That are not losses as in deaths, but losses as in friends. And she felt like she lost connection with her parents. And loads of things happened where she lost these things. But ultimately, it left her feeling alone.
Yeah, the other thing as well is which I can resonate to because we was talking about this just a minute ago with myself.
Yeah.
But what happens, what I find is when you're in that energetic state, what will happen is if you don't resolve the conflicts or the depression or the thing that's causing it, you just keep recreating it later on in life over and over and over and over and over again, and these patterns will form where the same thing keeps happening to you over and over and over again. Now you're going to turn around and start thinking that God hates you, or you're unlucky, or you're unfortunate, and it's always happening to me, but basically what's happening is you're energetically recreating it because that's where you're at, and so like attracts like, and so you'll just keep recreating similar circumstances over and over again, which I did for many years until I was able to identify that and switch them all off, and now obviously I don't have any of them. So there's hope for everyone out there. And so what's the solution to the people? So we know what it is. The solution is obviously to do.
See now what it is. You know the two main things it is. You need a way to change that, to switch it off. Now there are many techniques out there to do that. There are many great techniques that I learnt. But the technique that I created and I now do with Steve, and me and Steve do, is the DTO system. The reason the DTO system is different from other things, it's not an energy technique, so you don't have to learn anything.
It's not really a manage or coping.
It's not a manage or coping strategy. It will get rid of it and switch it off completely. And it looks at the belief systems in a very different way. It switches off guilt and shames, switch off the alone feeling, and can switch off and find the triggers and switch the triggers off. And we can show you how to switch your own triggers off and give you that to do in your own time. So you are taking back control of your own life. You are healing your own life and changing your own triggers. So the DTO system is a very, very powerful way to change how you think and feel about those territorial issues, and to bring you back to being you. It takes you back to being who you really are.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it virtually happened, and it does happen instantly. Once you switch the trigger or switch the guilt off, it happens. That does happen pretty much instantly. I mean, in most cases.
In a lot of cases, it will do.
It's a very, very small percentage that it doesn't. But what I mean is that there's a whole load of things that make it up, doesn't it? But you will identify that once you're doing that, you will instantly find that being resolved.
There are a few things that make it. I mean, you've got the territory shocks, you've got the triggers, and you've got the alone response, and those are the main things. I treat a lot of complicated people, so I treat a lot of people who are more complex than the average person. And they've got a lot of issues running. They've got a lot of things running that they've never been able to deal with. They've tried all the counselling and all the other things, and it hasn't worked. They may have even tried the other energy techniques, and it hasn't worked. And I work with those people. Those people take longer. So, as I said earlier on, 60% of people I treat, they get better within 1 to 2 months. 40%, another 30% take 4, 5, 6 months, and there's a small percentage that take longer because they're very, very stuck because of way they've perceived it. So often the perception of all these things, which is the root problem, the perceptions of all these territorial shocks, the perception of the triggers, is we are taking it personally. We are making it mean something about us. And the DTO system is good at getting what it means to about us and switching that off. Once we can do that, once we stop making it mean something about us, the problem goes away. But some people have that lots. So the more you have, the more territory shocks you have, the more triggers you have, the longer it takes. But it can still be switched off. It can still be changed, and you can still heal. Whether it takes you 2 months or 6 months or a year, that's better than spending your whole life, the next 30 or 40 years of your life.
It's not a life.
It's not a life. So what do you want to do? Do you want to sit there and go, well, it's going to take me 6 months, I'm not going to bother, and spend the rest of your life suffering? Or do you want to spend 6 months focused on you, heal it, and get your life back?
Yeah.
Now, I tried for years to solve my depression, and I tried lots of things, and it wasn't until I found DTO, it answered a few things that were missing for me. It gave me the pieces that weren't being resolved in other areas to solve it for me. Like the what does it mean to me and about me. It helped me find what it means to me. It helped me realise about that you have to find the specific triggers and switch those off. It helped me realise multiple things that I wasn't being taught, and that allowed me to switch it off finally. And it allowed me to find one other thing, which I'm hearing being spoken about a lot at the moment. But with very, very deep depression, if you really want to heal a trauma specifically, very thoroughly, you have to get to a place of forgiveness. This is one of the last pieces that has really worked for me, that I do a lot with other people now. If there's a trauma running and you've tried other things to clear it, it hasn't fully cleared, that's because you haven't come to a place of forgiveness. Forgiveness, in my world, is not the same as other people's worlds. So people go, yeah, no, I've forgiven that now, and they move on, but they actually haven't. There's still some energy running. So if you think you've forgiven someone, but there's still anger there, or there's still resentment, or there's still a thought that says, yeah, well, it just sort of happened and I'm okay. That's actually not good. That's still running. That thought may sound okay in your brain. Oh, well, yeah, it's okay, it happened, but it's still in your head. You're still going, well, it's okay, I'm all right. No, that belief is actually, it's very low-level belief, but it's still running a little bit. Even positive beliefs about the situation can actually be negative, because you're still thinking about the situation, you're just thinking about it positively.
Yeah.
No.
It's a bit like a reframe, isn't it?
It's a reframe.
Yeah.
You shouldn't
they do
really.
Not work.
No, reframes don't work. No, sometimes reframes work. They do work very well in some techniques.
Yeah.
But if they're not work, most reframes are false, and you're trying to be something you're not.
Yeah, that's,
so if you're trying
that's
to be,
where I was coming from.
That's where you're coming from.
I'm glad you clarified that, but yeah, for me, they don't work.
No, if you're trying to be so if you're trying to be strong but you feel weak, it won't work. You're trying to be strong because you feel weak, so you're trying to reframe. No, it's okay, I'm strong, I can do it, and then you do that for a few months, and you go back to feeling weak again, and you try and reframe it again.
Yeah.
That you need to switch that off and come back to being you. But if you really are struggling, you tried lots of things, and the trauma's not clearing, then there's a forgiveness process within the DTO system that brings you to a place of complete forgiveness, where you either just feel a cool breeze when you think of that scenario, and there's no negative or positive thought process, there's just nothing there, and you just smile for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I get really is that I don't really think about it anymore.
No, it shouldn't go through your head.
It doesn't really.
There's no problem.
No.
It's in the past. Whatever's happened is in the past, and the future is irrelevant. So DTO just kind of brings you to a place of presence.
Yeah.
You shouldn't actually be thinking about your past. And I've heard lots of gurus and spiritual people talk about that, and they kind of fell into that at some point. And I was wondering how to get to that place. And you can do that with DTO, where you no longer just think about the problem. So even if you feel that you've healed it, but you're still thinking about it, even kind of in a positive way, you're still thinking about it, and it's still running on some level.
Yeah.
I know that might be brand new information for some of you, but I work with a lot of people who are very stuck, and I find that to be the case in a lot of people, and that's sometimes their missing piece to actually feeling completely at peace about the situation and completely happy.
Yeah.
So those are the actual steps. So very quickly, you find one or combination of those 5 territorial shocks. You find the triggers that are triggering those territorial shocks. You find the alone feeling underneath those, and or the lack of forgiveness. And once you do that, within a few months, 1 to 2 months, 4 to 6 months, your depression will lift, it will vanish, and very often, in a lot of people, as Steve said, you get an instant result. But if you're very, very stuck, it can still happen. I was one of those stuck people. Steve was one of those stuck people, and it can still lift, it can still be changed. You just need to follow that process. Obviously, we can't do that process with you through this mic.
Yes.
But we can say, if you do that, if you find someone who knows all the information, knows how to find the 5 territory issues, know how to find the clearer triggers, then you can get better. But if you do want help, then you can contact me and Steve.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, so now it's a choice, really. Now there is a solution to it.
There is a solution. I promise that's a solution.
And it's a choice now. So you have a choice now whether you want to live with it, cope with it, manage with it, or actually get rid of it and solve it and start living your life from a better place. So, like as Jonathan said, you can obviously get in contact with us. You can email us at insideout insideouteffect@gmail.com, where we'll obviously read your email in confidence, and either myself or Jonathan will get back to you with some advice or how you can get in contact with us. You can visit myself on Healing the Mind. I'm Steve, healingthemind.co.uk, or you can visit Jonathan's website, which is decodingpain.com, and there's a lot of information on there with regards to pain as well as depression and anxiety and the other areas that Jonathan deals with. And so based on that, I think we're going to probably finish off for today. It's been really, really great. I hope you guys have taken a lot from it and that you realise that there is a solution to your depression. Next episode 5, I think we're going to do stress, aren't we? We were going to do fight and flight, but I think actually...
Well, stress is fight and flight, really. So
the
combination of fight and what fight and flight is, how it becomes stress, how it affects us, how stress affects us, why it affects us.
Misunderstanding of stress.
And the misunderstanding. It's very misunderstood, very much like depression and anxiety. It's very misunderstood what stress is and how it gets triggered. And if we can clear that up, then we could resolve stress quite easily as well.
Yeah. So I also think as well, a little shameless plug here, I think we're going to be setting up the Inside Out initiative, where we can be looking at maybe working with corporations and businesses to help in the workplace, but that's something we'll keep you posted when that's happening. So a little bit of information, a little bit of a plug there. So so I think we'll probably wrap up for today. So we want to thank all the listeners for listening and joining us, and we do really hope that this now gives you a ray of hope really to solve your problem.
Yeah, that's all we're trying to do is give you hope. Often the first thing I give people is hope. By sharing this new information, by sharing this new understanding, then it gives people hope. It gives people an answer. And once you have hope, once you have another idea, you can then set about solving it. And that's all we really want to do is give you hope and show that you can get rid of it. Me and Steve did it in ourselves. We've done it in other people. It's totally possible. But it starts with that hope, knowing that it's possible, knowing you don't have to live with it.
And it's also you taking the first step to loving yourself or caring enough about yourself to actually to want to actually live a life without it and start living a more fulfilled life. Because regardless of where we are, it does have a massive impact on the people around us, whether it's family, whether it's relationships, whether it's your children, whether it's your work colleagues or your friends. It does have an impact on them. So just take the first step and start taking steps to live a life without it. That's probably the best advice I can give.
Yeah.
So anyway, we thank you again. I've said it for about the third time now, but we thank you again for joining us. And so we will look forward to catching up with you in the next episode of the Inside Out Effect. So from me, Stephen, it's good night from him, and from you, Jonathan.
And it's good night from me.
Goodbye.